Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
We are likely to be in for a rough ride for the next few days.
As COVID-19 variants spread, a long weekend warning from BC's top doctor also.
It's been very difficult being, not being able to touch your loved one.
Hugs and hand-holding. Relaxed visiting rules take effect at long-term care facilities.
And the suspect in last weekend's deadly stabbing spree in North Vancouver makes his first court appearance.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. A clear warning from the province tonight as BC grapples with surging COVID-19 case numbers.
The message: the long weekend is not the time to waver when it comes to restrictions. Our Tanya Fletcher is here to break down what we heard today. Tanya, what's the directive when it comes to Easter plans?
Yeah, be extra careful and make sure to keep it local. If you do spend time with anyone outside your household, make sure it is outdoors. That's the main message. And as for travel, we've heard reports for much of the afternoon about extra long lineups at the ferry terminal. So I want to take you to a live shot of Horseshoe Bay Terminal in West Vancouver so you can see quite a few cars there lined up. Again, this is all in perspective. They usually add some extra sailings for the long weekends, but yes, a fair number of cars there. The warning, though, from Dr. Bonnie Henry has been that travel of any kind, even within BC, is still very high risk. So now is not the time for any of us to be traveling for leisure or vacationing outside our own community. The rule of thumb in general is, if in doubt, don't go.
A good guideline is to think about staying within the area where you would go for a day trip. If it requires an overnight stay, a vacation rental, then it is not a good idea right now. If you need a break, go to a local campground. Stay in a local hotel.
Well, the health minister points out as well that this long weekend will mark the first time many long-term care residents will get to see their loved ones in person. But he did offer this word of caution.
If anyone is even thinking or close or feels they might be ill, not to visit a care home this weekend, even though it's been, I know, for many people, a year's wait. We have to be prudent and care about infection control right now.
In total, about 16% of eligible British Columbians have been vaccinated to date.
All right, we'll have more on vaccines in a second, but Tanya, how are the variants playing into our recent case totals?
Yeah, today we have 90 new confirmed variants of concern in BC, and we know more young people are getting hit harder by COVID, and more variants of concern are cropping up in those young people. The median age of the P1 variant, originating from Brazil, for example, is 28 years old here in BC, and we know the variants are more transmissible, so we asked if there's more detailed data on where exactly in the community they're spreading.
Transmission in social networks, so where people are having social gatherings together, and many of the same people are working in the restaurant or hospitality industry, living in group accommodations, living in crowded homes with others. And we're seeing spread in all of those environments.
Overall, she says risky contacts are up, and that's, of course, bad news for variant spread. And as we mentioned, 16% of British Columbians have been vaccinated to date, and so that's another reason they say that you should stick with just your core bubble this long weekend. Mike, Anita?
Tanya Fletcher live for us tonight. Thanks, Tanya. And as BC's vaccination schedule rolls forward, the next age group can start booking today. People 72 and up can set a date to get immunized. That's anyone born in 1949 or earlier. Fraser Health has an online and phone booking system. All other health authorities are only booking by phone at the moment. And if the COVID vaccine appointment conflicts with your work, the province has also introduced measures to prevent you from losing your job.
And for those in the 55 to 65 age group who scrambled to find a pharmacy with the vaccine, AstraZeneca is going to be available at an additional 375 pharmacies in the Lower Mainland. That'll bring the total number to 488. The BC Pharmacy Association says vaccines are expected to arrive as early as Monday at the new locations.
Employers understand, workers understand that if the workers are vaccinated at workplaces, it gives a better opportunity for the operations to continue to operate, and also the workers' health and safety is safe.
That's the minister there referencing time off if you need to get the vaccine. You can also take time off to get a dependent family member vaccinated. The province is still in the process of consulting with business owners on whether the hours taken off could also be paid.
And south of the border, a significant number of people 65 and older in Washington state have chosen not to get the COVID-19 vaccine. As of Monday, about 27% hadn't gotten the shot, even though vaccines have been available to residents in that age group for 3 months. The state's governor calls the trend really disturbing because COVID-19 is still killing people. State Department of Health data shows 84% of people who have died in the virus in Washington state are 65 or older. It also shows that nearly 28% of people have received at least one dose of the vaccine, and almost 17% are fully vaccinated.
Well, there are family reunions a year in the making. Relaxed rules for visitors in long-term care homes have gone into effect province-wide today.
Family members can now hug and hold hands with their loved ones with masks on. But as John Hernandez reports, there's still some concern from staff when it comes to opening back up.
So we both aged.
It might not have been an easy year.
It's been very difficult. It's been very difficult being, not being able to touch your loved one.
But a global pandemic wasn't going to stop 84-year-old Lucille Minuk from holding her husband Harry's hand again.
I knew I would be able to see him again. I didn't think it would be this long.
Harry is a patient at the Three Links Care Society in Vancouver, once the site of a COVID-19 outbreak, now easing restrictions after a year of plexiglass hellos and virtual visits.
I think one of the most important things, which is good to see, is that they can also now hug and they can hold hands, and that's really the social connection has really been missing.
The rules went into effect today province-wide amid widespread vaccinations of care home residents and staff. The centers now allow up to 3 visitors, 2 adults and a child, and even outdoor strolls. It was a similar sight of relief at Abbotsford's Tabor home, where visitors trickled in throughout the day.
They've been through a very difficult outbreak here, and I see the staff honoring, I see them making good choices. I feel totally comfortable to come in here.
Smile-inducing reunions that still aren't without safety concerns. With COVID-19 variant cases mounting in BC, fears of new outbreaks linger.
To be honest, we're all a little nervous about opening up quite so quickly because we don't want to go through another outbreak and because there are still some unknowns.
Back at Three Links Care, rapid testing provides an extra layer of defense, an effort not lost on families who know there's still risk.
It's very good, but we still have to be very careful.
Each precaution, a small price to pay to make up for lost time. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
Staff shortages and inadequate cleaning are in part to blame for BC's deadliest care home outbreak. A Vancouver Coastal Health Inspection report shows as more employees contracted COVID-19, Little Mountain's staffing numbers dropped. It's not clear how long the facility was understaffed or how that affected the home's ability to limit the spread of the virus. A total of 72 staff members got COVID and more than 40 residents died. One family member of someone who died at Little Mountain calls the report vague and is demanding more answers.
Vancouver Canucks games have been postponed through next Tuesday. The announcement by the NHL comes after Vancouver's game against the Calgary Flames last night was postponed. 2 Canucks players and a member of the coaching staff were entered into the league's COVID protocol. Pending test results in the coming days, the NHL says it expects the Canucks will return to game action April 8th.
And some good news for BC breweries, wineries, and other producers can now serve on site. Their patios can stay open amid the province's new restaurant restrictions. They do not need to serve food to fall under the allowance for patios, and liquor manufacturers can still serve people at indoor tasting rooms as long as they meet a few conditions. That means no indoor seating except for people who can't stand. They have to keep COVID-safe capacity and distancing rules in mind, and customers have to keep to their own group, among other rules.
BC's Human Rights Tribunal is putting anti-maskers on notice tonight. It says people wanting to file a complaint will now have to prove they have a disability that prevents them from wearing a face covering. It says it won't be protecting people who refuse to wear masks as a matter of personal preference. The tribunal has received many complaints about mask measures for public indoor places in our province. The tribunal is still figuring out how much medical proof is needed to be exempt from the rules.
The man accused in the deadly Lynn Valley stabbings in North Vancouver made his first court appearance today via video conference.
Our Yvette Brent has more on how it unfolded from outside the courthouse.
Today, the 28-year-old man who is accused in the Lynn Valley Library stabbings on Saturday appeared in this courthouse. Mr. Yannick Bandaago appeared by video link. He was wearing a white padded vest. He did speak in French. He is charged with second-degree murder in those stabbings that left a 20-year-old woman dead and 6 people seriously injured. Judge Patricia Jansen urged Mr. Bandaago to apply for legal aid and to perhaps apply for a trial in French, as he is French-speaking. There was a translator that helped with the hearing. Mr. Bandaago has been in quarantine in isolation because of COVID up until today, so he has not had access to a telephone to speak to a lawyer. The case is set to be heard again later today and then put over to another date. Yvette Brent, CBC News, North Vancouver.
Well, there's been a spike in jewelry theft scams in East Vancouver, and police are warning people to be careful.
A lot of people are losing items that are very either sentimental to them, sometimes jewelry, chains, necklaces, rings that have either been in their family for decades or generations, or items that have significant monetary value.
Police have seen a 500% increase in jewelry scams since the beginning of this year. 30 incidents have been reported so far this year, and likely dozens more unreported. These scammers typically use sleight of hand distraction techniques to steal from victims, or they trade worthless jewelry in exchange for cash.
Well, it's April Fool's Day, but this is no joke. Starting today, the province is taxing your soda pop. Sugary soft drinks used to be exempt from the PST, but now they'll be taxed at 7%. It's one of a series of new goods and services getting dinged by Victoria. Streaming services like Netflix and Disney Plus are now taxable, as well as vape products. The plan was initially set to be rolled out in July last year, but was pushed back because of the pandemic.
Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe joins us now. Johanna, every time I look, and I shouldn't be looking, I should just be listening to you, at the weather, it seems to be changing for this weekend.
Yes, I know. It's not just you and it's not just me. This is the pinwheel of doom. I just made that term up, but it's the center of a low. And whenever we get these pinwheels move across the south coast, it's really hard to nail down exactly when and where the showers are going to show up. Things are starting to come more into focus and more into our favor, I think, as well. Let me start you off with a look at the current temperatures, though. We're going to see a change in temperatures as well as we head into the weekend. 13 right now at YVR, bumping up just in the past hour. We did have cloud cover for most of the day. We got by with a mainly dry Thursday, though. Few showers out towards Abbotsford and Chilliwack. I think a lot of that is Virga, not quite making its way down to the ground. So generally, it has been dry across the south coast. Here is the aforementioned pinwheel of, what did I call it? Pinwheel of doom that is sliding down the coast. That's what will bring us showers for Saturday. I think that's our best bet at actually seeing a bit of a washout of a day. But watch as I take you through the next 24 hours. Cloudy as we get into our Friday. These nice sunny breaks we're seeing right now will be replaced with cloud. Just a slight chance of a midday shower, but Anita and Mike, for the most part, it's a dry end to the week and a dry start to the long weekend for many. I'll take you through that changing Saturday and back to a sunny forecast. My confidence in this is going up at every moment.
All right. Johanna Wagstaffe tracking the pinwheel of doom tonight from North Vancouver. We'll talk to you again in a bit. Okay, you take a shower, a bath, you wash the dishes, and all that hot or warm water stays hot or warm and just washes down the drain.
But what if you could take that water and suck out the energy? A BC man has created a company that's doing just that. Take a look.
What this is here is nice warm water that came out of these wash machines and would have normally just gone down the drains. When people have their shower, when they do their laundry, they're doing their cooking, they dump the hot water down the drain. That's energy that's just being thrown away. So what we did at Shark is just invent the way to make efficient, trouble-free recovery of that energy. So we don't deal with the wastewater. We just take the heat back and put it back in the buildings very, very economically.
So Washout is a laundry service for residential as well as commercial. To help give you an idea, our Fortis bills, we're kind of running in the $3,000 to $5,000 a month range when we're busier. With the Piranha system, we're hoping at a minimum to cut that in half. For us, the cost savings is initiative. It's cash flow positive for us. We were able to qualify for a grant administered by Fortis and sponsored by the province that paid for the lion's share of the Piranha system. And it's going to be completely transformative for our business.
Food processing plants, laundries, hospitals, breweries, they all throw away a tremendous amount of hot water. Well, we think we can have a tremendous impact on the environment and the energy scene by just recycling that energy continually.
Always good to see the Made in BC solutions.
Yeah.
Like this.
Recycled water recycling or something like that. Good idea.
Sure.
Okay, a reminder, you can also watch our newscasts live on CBC Gem.
CBC Vancouver is also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram.
Well, less than a week after easing restrictions, some parts of Canada flipped the switch, sending people into full COVID-19 lockdowns. What it all means, coming up. And at 6:16, thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream tonight. An athlete in Toronto has been chosen as the face of a Special Olympics campaign in that city.
The 8-year-old's photo will be seen at local grocery stores starting this week. And as Talia Ritchie shows us, the goal of the campaign is to promote healthy, active living while raising money for the Special Olympics.
Ready? Wait. Ready to go. Bowling, bowling. Hi, my name is Alma and I'm 8 years old.
Alma started Special Olympics at age 2, and when she began, she was using a walker. She wasn't speaking yet. And through the Active Start program, week over week, she got stronger and stronger. And one day we were all the parents standing at one side of the gym, and we look over and there's a ball, and Alma's chasing the ball. She's left her walker behind and she was off to the races. Okay, here we go. I think it's really important for us to see kids with disabilities in everyday life. I'm really excited that Alma is part of this campaign. I really think that healthy living, particularly for young people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, is sometimes put on the back burner.
Tap. And tell me about your favorite thing about the Special Olympics.
I like that after you do lots of work, we have a dance party.
So rather than focusing on the rules of the game, they focus on running and jumping and kicking. They've been doing virtual programming on Zoom. She can tell that it's Special Olympics Day. That's the day that she springs out of bed and says, oh, it's Special Olympics tonight.
Alma, how do you like doing virtual sports?
Fun.
It's fun?
I like jumping, hopping around in my house. Sometimes I like to skip. I like to do a little boogie.
That has been a real impact on our athletes, to not have that social connection to their community. We just really want our athletes to know that that we're thinking about them, that we've got their backs, that we want them to stay connected.
I would love for people to know about Alma that really the sky's the limit, and the only thing I think that will hold her back is what people think she can't do. We just need to be there to cheer them on.
Yeah, That's great. And I mean, obviously not in pandemic times, but it would be nice to see more coverage, if you will, of the Special Olympics in our country.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime I've watched some of the events, the athletes are absolutely incredible.
There is coverage, but it would be nice to see more, that's for sure. Okay, back in just a couple of seconds. We got a lot more on that, the lockdown situation in Ontario, Quebec as well. So we'll have the latest on that and more news from across the country and around the world. But there's the sunshine on the ports over the North Shore on this Thursday night as we head into the long weekend in Vancouver. It's being called an emergency brake shutdown as ICU numbers hit record highs and variants spread across Ontario.
As Chris Glover tells us, the province has introduced sweeping measures to fight COVID-19, and they come less than a week after some restrictions were relaxed.
Patios in Toronto and Peel reopened less than 2 weeks ago, and now they have to close again.
It didn't work the first time. It didn't work the second time. What makes you think it's going to work the third time?
This restaurant owner says he spent tens of thousands of dollars to reopen.
It kills me to cut off the outdoor dining.
The premier says he had no choice but the 4-week province-wide shutdown starting Saturday.
If we don't do it, we'd be in deep, deep trouble.
The health minister says it's different from the stay-at-home order just after Christmas.
We saw that last time that it had tremendous ill effect on both children and adults, and especially with the warmer weather coming, we want people to be able to go outside and enjoy the outdoors.
Last week, personal services in lockdown zones got the signal to prepare to reopen on April 12th.
I booked about 3-4 people a day, and I was already going into my 3rd week.
Mississauga hairstylist Jessie Resendez feels gutted.
I just feel like, we're just not getting treated fairly.
For Toronto and Peel, most everything else remains the same. The province-wide approach is meant to discourage travel.
People from the high areas of lockdown are going out to the other areas, and we're seeing that spread.
The true story is it's much more complex than that.
Dr. Zane Chagla contributed to data in Ontario's latest modeling report showing essential workers saw the highest rate of this latest variant-fueled surge.
This buys us time. It helps the healthcare system great. But if we're not dealing with that route of transmission, no matter if we're open or closed, that's going to continue.
And probably get worse, he says, since essential workers will have to keep working during shutdown. He would prefer paid sick leave and targeted vaccines for those who can't stay home.
It is shameful that at this stage we're using blanket lockdowns as really the only public health measure.
The Canadian Federation of Independent Business points out in Toronto and Peel, indoor dining has been closed for 300 days now.
But for goodness sakes, we've got to find a pathway to allow businesses to have a heartbeat of economic activity if we're going to have a hope of having jobs for Ontarians to come back to.
And if I were running my business the way they're running their business, I would be out of business.
And just days after loosening some rules, Quebec is also imposing new restrictions. 4 regions have been put into the Quebec red zone, and 3 cities are moving into even tighter shutdowns. Schools and non-essential businesses in Quebec City, Gatineau, and Lévis are being closed for at least 10 days. A nighttime curfew in those cities has also been moved forward. Quebec is reporting its highest daily case count since late January.
And depending on where you live, varying restrictions on church services will be in place this Easter weekend. But as Cameron McIntosh shows us, the spirit of the holiday simply can't be locked down.
Shut off all our electronics.
COVID restrictions have kept James and Dawn Couts and their family from church, but not their faith. Each Sunday, they've held Mass at home on their own.
I still got Jesus, and I still can connect with him. I can still read my Bible. I can still pray.
This Sunday, they'll finally return to church, a relief for 16-year-old Ella.
I really like the community of church and going there and being able to see people I know and just having the priest actually there in front of me. It's very, it's much more special to me.
In Manitoba, churches can open to 25% capacity or 100 people, whichever is lower.
After being screened, then they just make their way into the church.
St. Mary's Cathedral, the seat of the Catholic Archdiocese of Winnipeg, would normally have 800 people on Good Friday. Now Mass has a waiting list.
It's so much better than no one. It's so important to have community.
Parishioners register online. Father Jeffrey Angeles works down the list.
We've almost accommodated every family who is currently on the roster attending our liturgies in person. So we kind of hit our goal, but kind of not.
Services are streamed online to others, the best they can do. Across the country, similar situations depending on restrictions. BC recently gave churches latitude to open, only to revoke it. Either way, the Anglican Diocese of BC decided Easter would remain online only.
Zoom or live streaming is in some ways a great equalizer that we're much more accessible to a much broader group of people.
Kelowna's St. Andrew's Anglican Church is one of many to have seen their congregation actually grow.
One day we'll get to meet them in person, but it has opened up a lot of doors, which has been pretty neat.
Be it the pew or the living room, one thing that's not changing.
Easter is still Easter, even if it's without all those physical aspects of it.
A faith rooted in resilience. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Radio-Canada's investigative program Enquête uncovered a secret draft plan to bury nuclear waste in Canada.
As Marie Maud-Denis reports, Canadian, American, and Japanese business people are involved, plus former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien.
Labrador, an iconic Canadian landscape. This place could become a dumping ground for the world's nuclear waste, but it's a secret. The people here are not aware that in Montreal and in Tokyo, businessmen are quietly working on a plan. For decades, potential sites have been studied in Ontario for storing Canadian nuclear waste. But the emails we have obtained talk about something else completely, making Canada the permanent place for foreign spent nuclear fuel. In 2019, Jean Chrétien wrote a letter to the potential Japanese partners to support the project. I have always thought that it is only proper that Canada should ultimately become the steward and guarantor of the safe storage of spent nuclear fuel. He signs as the former Prime Minister of Canada, but he's acting as a lawyer for the promoters of the project, clients of his law firm, Dentons. Just a few weeks later, Chrétien receives a response from a politically connected Japanese PR firm executive who cautions the former Prime Minister. Utmost care needs to be taken to keep the information from leaking.
We're actually dealing with a conspiracy of a small group of high-profile people that don't want the information to be under public scrutiny. That should be dealt with on diplomatic levels, on environmental protection levels.
Jean Chrétien's involvement could be crucial to the project. That seems to be the thinking of another lawyer at Dentons who wrote an email to the promoter of the project 9 days after the last federal election. Good news, Liberals back. Better news, Jean has now been appointed by Justin Trudeau as his trusted advisor. In essence, Jean will be privy to all major policy decisions going forward. When we told Jean Chrétien we had the emails and the letter he signed, he decided to sit down with us.
Mr. Chrétien, what do you know of this project? And why did you engage your respectability, credibility?
No, I'm a lawyer. The firm Dentons has a case, and they do legal work for this group who wants to promote the project.
The former Prime Minister believes Canada has a responsibility to take the world's nuclear waste.
But here in the correspondence we have obtained, the plan is to dig a hole in Labrador.
Yes,
to
you know, the
foreign,
problem... No,
foreign spent nuclear fuel.
We sold uranium. We did. So we have a responsibility. We made money selling uranium. So we should help, you know, to solve the problem that the countries who bought our uranium are facing with that.
Regarding special access to the current Prime Minister to promote this project, Chrétien says it's not the case.
I just want to know if it's true that you're a trusted advisor for Justin Trudeau.
No, I am a former leader of the party, but Mr. Trudeau is the head of the government, and I'm not his trusted advisor.
So it's not true?
No, it's not true. I've met him 3 times in his office, and I've met him only at social occasion in the town a few times.
So you don't open doors?
No.
So...
Oh, I can open the door for you to get you out.
Jean Chrétien says he is not a lobbyist and has not spoken to the Prime Minister or any other government member on this project. For The National, I'm Marie-Maude Denis in Montreal.
Well, tomorrow is World Autism Awareness Day. Up next, our Justin McElroy shares his journey on the spectrum and talks of the importance of knowing more about a condition that can be invisible to many.
It now seems certain the unspoiled Skagit Valley in southern BC will stay that way. The valley has been the center of an international dispute since the early 1940s. Today, a tentative agreement was reached that will preserve the wilderness area. Jerry Thompson reports.
The Ross Dam, just south of the international boundary in Washington state, generates hydropower for Seattle City Light Company. The reservoir behind the dam backs up across the line into Canada, flooding part of the Skagit Valley in British Columbia. The beautiful Skagit wilderness, only 2 hours' drive from the city of Vancouver, became an environmental battleground when Seattle decided it needed more electricity. British Columbia has a long history of controversial deals involving rivers that cross borders and dams that flood mountain valleys. The first agreement with Seattle City Light was signed more than 40 years ago. When the city decided it needed more electricity and didn't want to build a nuclear power plant, they asked to raise the Ross Dam and flood even more of the Skagit Valley. Picket lines and lawsuits were filed on both sides of the border. People were incensed that British Columbia would sell off the Skagit Valley for only $35,000. BC's premier at the time, W.A.C. Bennett, thought the deal was a good one.
The answer is no. We'll never ask anybody to repudiate an agreement.
But for 13 years, the government of his son, Bill Bennett, has been fighting to get out of the contract. Today, a compromise was announced by the International Joint Commission. It will save the Skagit Valley, but BC has to replace the electricity Seattle would have got from a higher Ross Dam.
I will say it's one of those unique situations that you run into in government where everybody wins.
I'm delighted, absolutely delighted.
Ken Farquharson led the fight to save the Skagit.
Yes, I see this as victory, but my enthusiasm is tempered by the fact that we still have a few hurdles to cross.
Farquharson says the National Energy Board must still grant BC permission to export the power, and both federal governments have yet to sign a new international treaty. Jerry Thompson, CBC News, Vancouver.
Rising out of the mist over the mighty Fraser River southeast of Vancouver, the new Anisis Island Bridge is the latest mega project nearing completion in the province. The crossing, costing $375 million, is the key to a new highway system designed to ease travel congestion in the southern and southeastern sections of Greater Vancouver. Premier Bennett operated the machine that placed the last 2 precast concrete panels linking the bridge into place.
We haven't just put 2 slabs of concrete in place. We've added another component of a transportation system that's going to benefit our people and the province for decades to come.
The bridge won't open until June, but when it does, 25% of the traffic now using the Massey Tunnel and the Patello Bridge is expected to use the new structure. Bob Gillingham, CBC News on the Anisis Island Bridge.
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
But the things we do today will prevent that next generation of cases. So we are likely to be in for a rough ride for the next few days.
With COVID-19 cases surging in BC, health officials are urging people not to travel this long weekend. Dr. Bonnie Henry also reemphasized the importance of public health orders forbidding all indoor social gatherings.
It's really an amazing feeling. It really is, because we both aged.
Starting today, rules have been relaxed for people who want to visit loved ones in BC's long-term care homes. Now, family and friends can touch their loved ones while taking precautions like wearing a mask and sanitizing hands. Long-term care staff say the change will make a huge difference for the people living in those homes.
And the man accused in a deadly stabbing at the Lynn Valley Library in North Vancouver had his first court appearance today. The judge urged the 28-year-old to apply for a lawyer and a French language trial. On Monday, the man refused to leave his cell where he's been in isolation due to COVID-19 since he was arrested. As a result, he's had no access to a telephone and has no lawyer yet.
Tomorrow is World Autism Awareness Day, and understanding how people navigate their lives living on the autism spectrum is in focus. And to further that conversation tonight, we're joined by the CBC's Justin McElroy. He wrote on the importance of knowing more about a condition that can be invisible to many and is often still stigmatized. The article, of course, on our website. Justin, what should people know about those living on the autism spectrum?
Well, I think the first thing to know, Mike, is what you said to end the sentence, that it's a spectrum. Approximately 1 in 66 Canadians are diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. And what spectrum means is that they can have all sorts of different symptoms associated with autism, and those symptoms can be mild or severe in all manner of ways. So what I like to tell people about myself is that I'm one dot on this large spectrum, and if people know a little bit more about me, they know a little bit about the story of autistic people, but it's just my experience and perspective.
All right, and they're going to find out more about you in the article, of course, but what motivated you to write about it?
A couple things. I think anytime someone is in a position to raise awareness and to tell a story and is privileged enough to have that platform to do so, to talk about a condition that is still often stigmatized and still invisible in a lot of different ways, it does a lot of good, hopefully. Tomorrow is World Autism Day. And the second thing is, as a journalist, I try and be an open book. And I often tell people, if people know a little bit more about the reporter that they're listening to, the more likely they are to trust them. So this is one small way of doing that, and it's one small way of sharing a little bit about myself and giving people example of what autism can look like in some situations.
And as you point out, it is a spectrum, but so there's going to be differences. But what do people still?
I mean, a lot, and it depends on the person, but there's a lot that ends up being generalized. I'm someone that people might consider on the high functioning autism, and people will, make jokes about, say, Rain Man or the Big Bang Theory or things that are superficial like that. And at the same time, just the supports that exist in education systems and in government, they have improved, but because of the nature of autism, it's still such a patchwork for parents, especially going from place to place to try and find the specific supports needed for their children. And it's hard to explain just all of them at one time to people.
Yeah, and tell us what you heard from the people you spoke with for the article.
Yeah, so doing this a story that appeared on our website, I talked to a couple of people. One of them is Paul Finch, the BC GEU treasurer, and he talked about, things that for people who are autistic will seem pretty common, things like, when you're talking to someone and they make a facial expression, you don't really understand at first. You have a database in your head where you go over all the different times that someone has made that facial expression, and then you try and sync it up to interpret how they were feeling about it. He talked about how he works with children and talks to kids who are on the spectrum and with their parents to, give kids encouragement, but also give adults some tips and to tell parents just to always encourage their kids and to make space for them to figure out exactly what their strengths and weaknesses are.
All right. Well, we certainly appreciate you sharing your journey with us tonight. Justin, thanks very much.
Thanks, Mike.
After the break, more heartbreaking testimony at the trial of the man accused of killing George Floyd in Minneapolis. We hear from Floyd's girlfriend and the paramedics who tried to revive him.
21 minutes before 7 o'clock, there's a live look. Interesting cloud cover in Victoria, downtown Victoria tonight. The sun did pop out for much of the south coast today, and the long weekend is here for many people. Johanna's going to tell us what we can expect next.
I saw what I thought was an Asian giant hornet. So I stopped and I watched a couple more go by, and I was pretty sure. So I called Mufida back.
And as I'm watching, he all of a sudden buckles over and spins around, and I realized that he was being stung.
At that point, there were 4 or 5 sightings. We got the data at 3:30, plotted them on a Google Maps, and they were all in a fairly tight area. The furthest between 2 points was less than a kilometer.
And as beekeepers, we know that all insects need a source of water. And there was a creek that went right through the middle of the map. What we also know is that these insects will defend their hives. So I didn't consider at all the possibility that it could be somebody's front yard or backyard, because they'd be getting people with severe stings. So that eliminated a huge part of the map.
The data in John and Mufida's map pointed to a forested area near Robbins Park, in and amongst a residential neighborhood just over 2 kilometers from Nanaimo's main port.
We went to scout the park area, and I'm tromping on a mission to check this trail out before dark.
And I'm stopping, looking around, because the sun was low in the sky, and it was easy to catch motion, kind of like when you walk into a room when the sun's low and you see all the dust particles. Anyway, I saw what I thought was an Asian giant hornet. So I stopped and I watched a couple more go by, and I was pretty sure. So I called Mufida back.
And as I'm watching, he all of a sudden buckles over and spins around, and I realized that he was being stung.
First thing I did was grab my shirt and pull, because that gets the stinger out right away. And I'm standing there like this because the Asian giant hornet is still right there, and I don't know what to do.
And then I'm watching him do that, and I start yelling at him. I said, "John, you need to move now."
John's sting was close to his throat, which was a dangerous location, as major swelling could cause his airways to close.
I don't know what was worse, the pain or actually seeing this thing, 6 inches from my face. Fortunately, it flew off. And then I still stood there, because there's that moment of, did this really happen? It was such a bizarre experience.
And so I took my phone out and recorded the coordinates, because I knew somebody had to come back.
Protesters in Myanmar are marking 2 months since the military seized power from the country's democratically elected government.
The overthrow has been met with massive public resistance and escalating levels of violence by security forces to crush it.
As Renee Filipponi reports, more than 500 people have been killed.
It's been 2 months of scenes like this. Daily protests met with violence by security forces, and the military coup gets more deadly by the week. Over 500 people have been killed, dozens of them children.
No one feels safe day or night, whether you're out protesting against a coup or whether you're simply hiding at home.
The military declared a 1-month ceasefire, but it's unclear what it will change because it also says it will continue to respond to protesters. Today, ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi appeared in court. Her lawyer says it's unclear if she knows what's happening on the streets, but says she seems in good health. Suu Kyi is facing new charges under the country's secrets law. Her supporters say it's all fabricated. The coup is putting intense pressure on Myanmar's borders as people flee the violence.
We reiterate our call for the exercise of utmost restraint, the escalation of situation, end to violence, and further release of detainees.
Thousands are arriving in Thailand seeking refuge from airstrikes on villages in Myanmar's Karen state. And there are now concerns protesters are turning to armed ethnic groups across the country.
This could be a real bloodbath. This could be a civil war.
Canada's ambassador to the UN says there are not a lot of signs the military is ready to step back.
As we've seen in other tragic situations, Syria, Venezuela is another example where you go very quickly from being a functioning state with a functioning economy to being a non-functioning state, effectively a failed state.
In an act of defiance, copies of the military-drafted constitution are burned in Yangon. A message from the protesters, they aren't ready to step back either. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, London.
7 pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong have been convicted on charges linked to the anti-government protests in 2019. Protesters gathered outside the courthouse today. The activists include Martin Lee, known as Hong Kong's father of democracy. Media tycoon Jimmy Lai was also convicted. All were found guilty of organizing and participating in an unlawful assembly. Sentencing is in 2 weeks. All right, Johanna Wagstaffe is here. The long weekend is here for some people. But you talked about what you call it, the pinwheel of doom?
Yes, copyright on that one. That is not a meteorological term.
You can't come up with these terms because then Mike's going to run with it now every day.
Yes, he will. I know.
It'll be an ongoing pinwheel of doom. Yeah.
Yeah, pinwheel of doom part 2. We can really run this to the ground. But yes, the pinwheel is what we're watching, bringing us a bit of this, a bit of that for the weekend. But as it comes more into focus, pinwheels are notoriously hard to forecast far in advance because it really is just like the spokes of a wheel. As this low pressure spins, you've got these showers rotating around, so really hard to nail it down. It looks like Saturday is really our only wet day with a mix of sun and cloud in between. But I want to start you off on the other side of the country. This is the other coast, and something that Atlantic Canada is getting that we see much more often than them is an atmospheric river. Pause for effect. Yes, this is the same kind of setup that we often get on the West Coast, that fire hose of moisture in the atmosphere directing subtropical moisture all the way up to our West Coast. That is what's happening to Atlantic Canada, except for taking it from the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean. That's where it's going to sit for several days. So 100 plus millimeters in store for places like Cape Breton. And then it's actually going to retrograde, moving east to west as we head into Sunday. So quite the washout on the East Coast. Have I softened you up yet before I get into a few showers on Saturday? Here's that low pressure system spinning down the West Coast. We are looking at some snow for both mountain ranges. Terrace, you're actually going to get another 2 to 5 centimeters. And Prince Rupert, you actually did see some snow overnight, mainly rain in your long range forecast. But notice now a few more locations with cloud cover and showers than yesterday as that low tracks across the province. So places like Williams Lake, Quesnel, Prince George, all looking at a showery Friday, but it's fast moving. I think we'll get back to the sunshine for the back end of the long weekend. I look at Friday's temperatures, still quite warm across the interior, 17 and through Soyuz. As I take you into Saturday, we start to see a slight cool down behind that low as it hops across the Rockies. Temperatures for us as we head into the weekend will also be variable, down to a 9 with that rain on Saturday. At this point, it does look like it clears right out by Sunday afternoon. Some models still showing an early morning shower. By Monday, beautiful blue skies. So all in all, not bad. A perfect one day to sit on your couch and one day to get outside, and dealer's choice for the third.
That's actually the perfect weekend.
Thanks. Thank you, Anita. Yes, I'm happy it turned out that way.
Thanks, Joe.
More heartbreaking testimony today at the trial of the former police officer accused of killing George Floyd in Minneapolis.
As Susan Ormiston tells us, the featured testimony came from Floyd's girlfriend and from paramedics who arrived on scene too late.
It seemed obvious to bystanders, but hard evidence today that by the time paramedics arrived...
What did his condition appear to be to you, overall?
In lay terms, I thought he was dead.
But Derek Chauvin didn't mention that or much else when his supervisor called him on the scene.
Yeah, I was just going to call you and have you come out to our scene here. Not really, but we just had to hold the guy down. He was going crazy.
No mention he used a knee hold or that Floyd was dead.
When Mr. Floyd was no longer offering up any resistance to the officers, they could have ended the restraint.
Emotional testimony too this morning.
Floyd has this great, deep Southern voice, raspy. He's like, sis, you okay, sis?
From his girlfriend, Courtney Ross, who met George Floyd in 2017.
This kind person just to come up to me and say, can I pray with you? When I felt alone in this lobby, it was so sweet.
For much of 3 years, they were a couple, but both struggled.
Floyd and I both suffered with an opioid addiction.
Starting with prescription painkillers, but leading to stronger drugs. Last March, Floyd was hospitalized.
You later learned that that was due to an overdose?
Yes.
Chauvin's defense team will argue that Floyd died from his drug use and other health complications, that on May 25th, he was with a known drug dealer. But prosecutors will continue to press that George Floyd died of excessive force, nothing else. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Minneapolis.
This exhibition was an opportunity for the museum to respond in some way to this extraordinary moment we're living through with the COVID-19 pandemic, while also recognizing that while this is a globally shared experience, it's one that is unevenly shared, particularly by communities of color. And in the exhibition, we're presented with a number of different approaches or considerations of healing and well-being, which I think the pandemic really calls us to consider and to rethink our understandings of health as an interconnected system that threads through our personal relationships with one another, as well as our relationships to our culture or even to the environment. A number of artworks in the exhibition respond directly to the COVID-19 pandemic. So we have a couple of works by Saskatoon-based artist Ruth Cuthand, where she's actually beaded images of the coronavirus. And it's a real juxtaposition of the beauty of the artwork with, you know, the sort of horror that we know the COVID-19 pandemic to be. Also, there is a plague mask by Brian Youngin, who's a Denaza and Swiss artist based in the Okanagan. And that mask references the plague masks of 17th century physicians who were treating the bubonic plague. So the mask has a large beak shape in front, which would have been filled with sweet-smelling plants. At the time, it was thought that disease was transferred through something called miasma, or bad air. The work that I'm standing in front of is by Kapwani Kawanga, who is a Canadian artist based in Paris. It's called The Marias, and it includes 2 paper copies of a plant species known as the peacock flower. A number of works in the exhibition address histories of resistance to oppressive power structures such as colonialism and racism. And Kapwani's work draws upon the history of enslaved women using the peacock flower as an abortive, to maintain agency over their bodies. I started at the museum in October, so the exhibition was organized in 5 months. But we felt it was really important to connect with people in our community about their experiences during the last year, and to really look to the ways in which artists offer us possible avenues for health and healing and well-being.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
CBC Vancouver's Dan Burrett returns as host at the virtual Surrey Board of Trade Top 25 Under 25 Awards on April 22nd. Get your tickets today at businessinsurrey.com. And don't miss the Doxa Documentary Film Festival, May 6th to 16th. Enjoy thoughtful and engaging documentaries, panel discussions, and educational programs, all from the comfort of your own home. Learn more at doxafestival.ca.
Well, it's opening day for the Toronto Blue Jays. They beat the Yankees in New York, and 10,000 fans were there to see it happen.
As Greg Ross reports, Canadian fans are hoping to see the team in person this season, too.
Blue Jays fan David Haggerty has high hopes for this season, but he wasn't quite feeling the energy in the city today, watching the game on this patio not far from the Rogers Centre.
This is absolutely not how I expected to start this season, in an empty tent, watching them play with no one here.
And he got a pitch over the heart of the
And it's likely going to be quite some time before fans like Haggerty will see the team in person, with the Jays being forced to play home games south of the border for the second straight season.
This is 2 years in a row. It's tough to watch them not play in Toronto.
Would love to go watch them in person, but we're not going down to Florida anytime soon. So.
Instead of playing home games here at the Rogers Centre this season, the Jays are going to start from their spring training facility in Dunedin, Florida. But the team is not ruling out the possibility of being back here for at least part of the season.
I think we'll all be watching the same things. It's going to be clear to all of us whether the circumstances, present a meaningful and healthy case for us to get back home. That's where we want to be. We hope to get there.
That was Jays president and CEO Mark Shapiro in February. He says they'll be following COVID-19 case counts and watching the vaccine rollout closely. But ultimately, the Jays need permission from the federal government to play at home. In a statement today, a spokesperson from Health Canada told us repeated cross-border travel of Canadian and opponent teams and spectator gatherings remain some of the key areas of federal, provincial, territorial concern for a full return to play of professional sports. But they didn't say if that could change.
Definitely with the Rogers Centre being right here, without a doubt, those are our big days.
Melissa McLennan is the manager at Pint Public House. She says they'll be watching closely because they count on the Jays to bring in huge crowds, particularly on promotional nights like Wednesday Wing Night.
Wednesdays when we have a Blue Jays home game, you're probably looking at $30,000, $40,000 a day, whereas last year, any given Wednesday, we're looking at, $5,000, $6,000.
The fact that the team is considered a playoff contender is only added incentive for fans to have the team back in the city.
Just not having the buzz, right? The buzz around the city.
I mean, I remember watching being in person for the Jose Bautista bat flip and the Edwin walk-off last time they made the playoffs. So it would be unbelievable if we could see that in person again.
It only lead to a positive chain of reactions for the city.
Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
And 2 police departments in the Lower Mainland chose today, April 1st, to announce they are expanding their forces.
We're launching some policing on a whole new scale with the launch of the Finned Integrated Shoal Team, or FISHT.
That fishy officer is joining the Surrey RCMP as Special Constable Gill. And here he is meeting his new patrol partner. Vancouver Police also chose today, April Fools, to welcome new members to the K9 unit, Whiskers and Garfield. They'll join the narcotics team. Yes, they are cats. And yes, these are April Fool's jokes.
Yes, it was not a year that had many people laughing, to say the least, but we have a couple more to share with you. April Fool's pranks, that is. Porsche releasing its charming new Patina for its luxury sports car. A look resembling rust for drivers who truly value individuality of the cars of the past. And tech company Razer played this prank, offering hair dye that lets you turn your locks into a glowing digital rainbow. Even beards can take on those bright colors. And remember, friends, these are not real events or products, but simply pranks played out.
I would take the hair one. I don't actually dye my hair, so it'd be fun to play around.
I guess so. And you know, it's done, right? April Fool.
Mike's not a fan
officially,
of April Fool's
no.
Day.
Have to end at noon, and that's it.
I think next year I'm going to have to play a good joke on you.
Okay. Mark it in
Watch your back.
Mark it in the calendar. There you go.
That's it for our show tonight. Our newscast is online always at cbc.ca/BC.
Next local news, 11 o'clock. Zara Premji in for Dan Burrett tonight after the National. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.